Welcome to the Heal from Your Narcissist podcast, your go-to guide for everything you need to know about narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse. Get ready to dive into understanding what drives narcissistic behavior and to learn clinically proven techniques for healing from the effects of narcissistic abuse with your host, best-selling author, and registered psychotherapist, Heather Kent.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Heal from Your Narcissist pop-up podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today and talking about this content because I really feel like this is a topic that is gaining more and more traction and more attention. And I really feel that, the problem of narcissism and narcissistic abuse and narcissistic relationships it's really prevalent. And so it's becoming more and more common. It's showing up in our day-to-day lives. It's showing up in our intimate relationships. It's showing up in our family relationships and in our family systems. It's showing up in our work and personal relationships. And so this is a situation that we are finding ourselves in, I think, more and more. And so today I want to specifically focus on what is this all about? What is narcissism? It has been a bit of a buzzword, I think, lately. And so today I want to focus on the specific traits of narcissistic personality disorder and what narcissistic abuse looks like. And so I designed this podcast for you if you are a strong and successful woman, you're confident and sure of yourself at work, you have had huge successes, you're well educated, you've got your life together, but you're feeling frustrated by lingering negative thoughts or feelings, negative self-view as a result of being in a relationship with a narcissist. You've been struggling to understand why your partner changed into someone unrecognizable over time. Maybe you're feeling alone and embarrassed and not sure what to do or how to recover from the trauma of what you've been through. And you just want to feel that safety and confidence again in your personal life after leaving a relationship with a narcissist, the same kind of confidence that you have in your professional life. And you want to heal from this trauma so that you can feel that safety and confidence again. And so many people ask me, how did I not see this? How could I be so stupid? What's wrong with me? I'm a smart, successful person. How could I let this happen? And I have said these exact words myself as a survivor of narcissistic abuse. And these are very common questions. Now, in order to heal from this very specific type of emotional abuse, we must first have an awareness of what happened and of what we're dealing with. Because the first step in any kind of lasting change is establishing an awareness of what the situation is. And so this is what I want to focus on with you today in this episode. Now, first, to go back to those questions, I need to be very clear that you are not stupid. There is nothing wrong with you. I'm going to say that again. There is nothing wrong with you. This did not happen because there is something wrong with you. Rather, it is because of all that is right with you that caused your narcissist to pay attention to you. And so let me elaborate on that a little bit. So if you're listening to this podcast, like I said, you're probably highly successful. You're probably driven. You're probably very focused. And you're probably also a highly sensitive person. You're probably an empath, meaning that you really feel for others' pain and suffering, and you want to do something to try and ease their pain or help them with their problems. And so being an empathetic person is a wonderful gift. However, it also tends to open us up to being vulnerable to personality types that could easily take advantage of us. Now, narcissistic personality types specifically seek out highly empathic people. They specifically seek out very positive and optimistic people. They seek out people who are excellent at forgiveness. They seek out people who have a history of being rescuers, which ties back into that whole wanting to help people and, save them from their pain and from their problems. They also tend to look for those of us who are adult children of narcissistic parents. Conversely, also they look for people who are adult children from very happy families, because there's a bit of a naivete there. People who are going through difficulty or a transition in their lives are also on the target list, as well as people who may have histories of trauma or significant loss in their lives. And so, to answer your question, what's wrong with me? How could this have happened? Nothing is wrong with you. It was all that is right with you that led us to be in this situation, because our high empathy, our high, levels of forgiveness, being excellent at forgiveness is a key trait that they look for. Being kind and compassionate and loyal and loving and wanting to do things to help someone else, sometimes to our detriment. These are all wonderful gifts. But like I said, they also tend to open us up to being vulnerable to these types of personalities who look to take advantage. So, what is a narcissist? This is the second point that I want to talk about today. Now, defining narcissism can be a little bit tricky, and it can be very tricky to spot because it's not always so obvious as popular media and the news may make it seem. So, and even in the American Psychological Association's Diagnostical Statistical Manual, the DSM-5, their definition of narcissistic personality disorder, I actually find it to be very limiting, because they only focus on one specific subtype of a narcissistic personality. And this subtype is kind of the more obvious one, because these people have a very grandiose sense of self. They think that they're very important. They exaggerate their achievements. They talk about how amazing they are, and they expect to be recognized as superior and as fantastic without actually having done any of the background work. They are very preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success and power and brilliance, or possibly beauty. And they kind of live in this delusional dream world where they think everything is amazing, including them, or especially them. And they believe that they are special and unique, and that they can only be understood and associate with other equally high status or special people. They also require excessive admiration, so constantly needing validation of their amazingness from other people. They have extreme sense of entitlement, which shows up as an unreasonable expectation of expecting people to favor them or grant them specific permissions that they're not supposed to have, automatic compliance with what they are expecting or what they ask for. They are also extremely exploitative. And so this really plays back on our whole being empathic, kind, and loyal. So they are interpersonally exploitative, meaning they take advantage of other people in order to get what they want. And the hallmark of all narcissistic personalities, no matter what the subtype, is that they lack empathy. They are unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and the needs of others. And that's what sort of sets a narcissistic personality aside from other personality disorders. And they are often very envious of other people, or they believe that other people look at them and are envious or jealous of them. And of course, we have the arrogant, haughty behaviors and attitudes that are blatantly displayed in public. So this is what the DSM-5 manual focuses on only, which describes to a T the first type of narcissist, which is called a grandiose or overt narcissist. Now, this is not the only way that narcissism shows up. And so this is why I have a problem with the DSM-5's definition, because it doesn't include other aspects of narcissistic personality disorder that show up in different ways. And so they also fail to cover key features of this disorder, such as vulnerable self-esteem, secret feelings of inferiority, feelings of emptiness, feelings of boredom, high emotional reactivity, and distress. So my personal preference in terms of an official definition of narcissistic personality disorder actually comes from the Mayo Clinic, because they include these other elements of an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, a history of troubled relationships, and of course, a lack of empathy for others. Now, you may be saying, well, that doesn't really make sense because, some of the narcissists that I see, in the news or on TV are, so over the top confident and, full of themselves. But that is all a mask. And the mask is there to hide their very fragile self-esteem that is vulnerable to the slightest criticism. So this translates to mean that narcissists are highly insecure people, despite what you may see on the outside, and they cannot tolerate any sort of criticism or indication that they may be in the wrong in any way. So this realization for me, after I had gone through such a relationship, I had this huge aha moment when I learned the definition of narcissism. And it was a relief to me because I realized for the first time in 8 years that I actually wasn't crazy. And so I just want to spend a little bit more time showcasing the other subtypes of narcissism so that we can kind of understand the differences in their personality traits, and so that we will be better able to identify them in future interactions with new people that come into our lives moving forward. So we talked a lot about the grandiose narcissist, and this is, someone you might very well be able to picture who you've seen on television, maybe a television personality, maybe a politician. I'm sure you can figure out an example in your mind. And so this is probably, the more exaggerated type. This is what everyone in the world tends to think of when we think of the word narcissist. But what makes narcissism so tricky is that it shows up in other ways that are much less obvious. So the second subtype of narcissist we call a vulnerable or a covert narcissist. And so this subtype is highly fragile, and they struggle with very high levels of anxiety. They are constantly in distress and are super hypersensitive to the opinions and evaluations of others. So conversely to the grandiose narcissist who, is over the top and craves to be the center of attention and wants to be in the spotlight, these narcissists actually shrink away from drawing attention to themselves because they are terrified of anyone possibly judging them. So they do not want to be in the spotlight. Now, like the grandiose narcissist, they are also highly envious of others, and they evaluate themselves constantly in relation to others, what others do, what others have, what others wear, where others go, how they vacation, etc. And they also evaluate themselves on their perception of the success of others by what they have. And so they're constantly playing this comparison, keeping up with the Joneses game with other people. Also similar to the grandiose narcissist, the covert narcissist is extremely self-absorbed, entitled, exploitative. So again, exploiting other people to get what they want. Again, lacking empathy, which is the hallmark trait, highly manipulative, and can be aggressive. Now, remember, they fear criticism so much that they tend to avoid attention. And so when you see them kind of in public settings or in social situations, these individuals are often presenting as shy, they present as modest, and they are so hypersensitive to the perceived slights, from others. And they harbor this inner secret grandiosity where they secretly think that they're better than everybody else, while they also have this intense self-loathing at the same time. And so they struggle with this, dichotomy of what they're carrying. So they're highly insecure and unhappy with their lives. Typically, they reportedly experience more guilt, more symptoms of depression, hypersensitivity, and lots of shame. They carry very heavy amounts of shame and self-loathing. So they're very conflicted, while they're holding both this inflated and negative, irrational views of themselves at the same time. Vulnerable or covert narcissists are highly averse to any kind of personal growth. Again, because this takes us back to that intense fear of criticism. How can you show up to a therapist admitting that you need help when any kind of admission is incongruent with their false self that they've created? And so they require constant reinforcement from others. And I do mean constant reinforcement and validation from others for their grandiose self-image, that false self that they've created. And they become highly defensive whenever they perceive criticism, because this triggers their own negative opinion of themselves. Now, unlike the extroverted, grandiose narcissist, a covert narcissist lacks positive relationships. So instead of dominating people and living in delusional world that they think everyone loves them, they're very threat-oriented, they're very distrustful, and their attachment style is more avoidant and anxious. Their empathetic, codependent partners feel very compassionate for them, and they want to rescue them from their misery or from their pain, but they end up self-sacrificing so much to the point where they feel responsible for their narcissist's happiness. And so this is a subtype that we see a lot. And you may also see a person kind of swinging between a couple of these subtypes. So a grandiose narcissist may also have vulnerable traits and vulnerable moments, and then they'll swing back to grandiose again. So you definitely can come across someone that may have a couple of these sort of subtypes at play at any given point. Now, the type of narcissist that I was involved with is particularly tricky to see, because they are showing up as very normal people. And this type of narcissist is called a communal narcissist. Now, this was it's one of the newer subtypes. It was first identified about 10 years ago. And communal narcissists value warmth, agreeableness, and relatedness. And so they are socially very easy to get along with. They present as very normal. They see themselves, and they want to be seen by others, as highly trustworthy and highly supportive. And so they try to achieve this through being really friendly and very kind and, happy to help out with anyone who needs something. They're very outgoing, similar to the grandiose narcissist, but they're not over the top. And so whereas the grandiose narcissist wants to be seen as the smartest and the best and the most powerful, a communal narcissist...
And don't forget to connect with Heather directly at www.heatherjkent.com, where you can send her a message, follow her on social media, or book a one-on-one call to continue on your healing journey.
So a communal narcissist is very vain, and their selflessness, their seeming selflessness, is actually no less selfish than that of a grandiose narcissist, because they both share these similar motives of being recognized for their amazingness, right? And so communal narcissists will look for opportunities to demonstrate that they are the best good person out there. And that makes them very difficult to spot. And to the outside world, they are amazing. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been told, oh, Heather, you are so lucky. You know, he is so amazing. He's so great. He's so helpful. He's so considerate. He's so thoughtful. He's so he dedicates so much time to helping other people. You're so lucky. And it's true. You know, to other people, he was a great person. They show up as wonderful, kind, thoughtful people. However, their motives behind their behavior to the outside world are non-genuine. And then finally, we have a very dangerous subtype, and we call this type a malignant narcissist. And so the malignant narcissists are considered to be at the extreme end, you know, of the continuum of narcissism due to their cruelty and aggressiveness. So they're characterized, again, by the typical symptoms of a grandiose narcissistic personality. However, they also display prominent antisocial behavior. They experience high levels of paranoia, and they take pleasure, and this is what sets them apart. They actually take pleasure in their aggression and sadism towards torturing others. So chronic lying, and they take sadistic pleasure in controlling and frightening and intimidating other people. These are key features that set them apart from other narcissistic subtypes. So figures like Hitler and Joseph Stalin might fall into this category, and they're actually bordering on what we call the dark triad, which includes, you know, psychopathic behavior, Machiavellianism, antisocial behavior. And so this provides a very powerful motivation for the malignant narcissist to continue their behavior, because their secondary gains from this type of cruelty is usually quite significant. It could be financial, it could be interpersonal, and it's a huge motivator to continue behaving in this way. They find pleasure in creating chaos, and they make it their mission to take other people down who they perceive as threats or who they believe has outed them in some way. So these narcissists aren't necessarily grandiose. They're not necessarily extroverted or neurotic, but they are very closely related to, like I said, psychopathic and antisocial personality behaviors. So this is a more detailed picture of what narcissism actually looks like. And so I really feel like this is important for us to understand, because we can identify the differences and the different traits of the different subtypes, so that this can help to inform us moving forward as we engage in new relationships and new people come into our lives. And so the result of all of this, when we are involved with narcissists of any kind of subtype, is that it feels like you're a survivor of an emotional tornado. And so if you can imagine the survivor of a tornado, you know, standing where her house once stood, and she's just surrounded by this absolute wreckage and rubble in every direction, and everything is buried in this pile of debris. And seeing all of this would be just too much for a person's brain to process, much like the aftermath of a narcissistically abusive relationship. And once it's all over and the tornadoes, winds have dissipated, there's this eerie calm that comes over you. And maybe all you can think is, how did I get here? And what do I do now? And that is what we're going to spend the next few episodes talking about. So if you have any questions about any of this, if any of this is resonating with you, or you want to get more information, or if you want to connect with me about your own experience, I would love to hear from you. So I want to invite you to book a free consulting call, and you can head on over to my website at heatherjkent.com and click on the link at the top of the page to book in a time with me. I would absolutely love to hear from you and to answer your questions, clarify anything that you've heard here today. And thank you so much for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you again soon.
This has been another episode of Heal from Your Narcissist, where we help survivors of narcissistic abuse make sense of their experience and share clinical tools for healing. If you like today's show, be sure to share with a friend and leave a review on whichever platform you are listening from. And don't forget to connect with Heather directly at www.heatherjkent.com, where you can send her a message, follow her on social media, or book a one-on-one call to continue on your healing journey.